This week on Project Freelance, I am talking to the creator of Launch Music Conference. Launch is a music conference that brings together up-and-coming artists, industry professionals, and bands that have been in the game for years together under one roof so that they can literally just interact and pick each other's brains, and the up-and-coming bands can ask these industry professionals questions directly without having to go through their PR or through their managers. You can walk up to your favorite artists, you can walk up to the label heads at Fearless Records, and you can say, hey, this is me and my band. Here's a demo. This is what we're all about. We would love to talk to you. And these people will take the time and they will talk to you. There's panels, there's live music performances. You can submit your band to play at Launch. It's amazing. I went last year. I filmed Launch. You can go check out the recap video on the Launch Music Conference YouTube channel. I'll link the video down below. It's like an 8-minute recap just to give you a little idea of what happened at Launch, what it's like to go there. And if you want to submit your band to play, you can actually do that. You can submit your band to play, and if you are selected, you not only get to play at a show, but you also get badges for your entire band to go attend Launch Music Conference for free. It's amazing. It's a great opportunity, and I'm going to shut up and let Jeremy talk about it in 1 second after I tell you that today's podcast is sponsored by all of you. If you are a filmmaker or a photographer and you need some editing software, there are links down below for you. If you click on those links, you get discounts. I get commission. This is how this works. This is how sponsorship works. That's why I'm saying you're sponsoring this podcast, because you are. There's also a bunch of other links down there for things like adulting, tracking your mileage, if you want to start investing in cryptocurrency, things like that. Down below, everything's down below. If you want to check out my music that is going to be submitted to be played at Launch Music Conference, go to chasingsatellitesmusic.bandcamp.com. We have a Women of the 90s tribute cover album coming out on January 1st. Really excited about it. Without further ado, I'm going to let Jeremy talk. Thank you for being on this podcast. This is Project Freelance.
My name is Jeremy Weiss. I have lived in Lancaster, PA my entire life. And I started in the music, I guess, in music. I wouldn't call it the industry back then, but doing shows when I was a young teenager, like 15 years old. I answered some ads in the back of like some indie magazines for my favorite bands, and they answered, and I didn't tell them how old I was, and they didn't know until they got here. I was a kid. I was following a bunch of underground artists, so I decided, they were putting out their own records, so I would put out my own. I think most people back then were putting out their own records because there really was no business behind it. You weren't going to get offers from, quote, other labels. There certainly were no high functioning indie record labels. They became such, by putting out all these early releases and stuff. So really everything that I started doing was a function of the original notion, the DIY thing, where if you wanted something to happen, you just did it yourself, because there was no real organized effort towards getting the type of music that I was interested in into my town. It was just person to person. So just kind of did the whole thing, went to, finished high school, finished college at the University of Pittsburgh, and then came home and said, you know what, this is what I really want to do. So I'm going to try it for 5 years. And then 5 years later, I said, I'm going to try it another 5 years. And, 30 years later, I'm done trying. I'm just doing, I guess. So.
Talk about the Lancaster scene as far as music. Talk about how it's unique and why it's unique.
Lancaster has a really long history for the size of population that we have. Because of our geographic location, Lancaster's gotten some of the biggest acts in the country to come through here on off nights. So, on a Thursday night, you could see a band that really has no business playing in a market this size, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, because they were on their way from Washington, D.C. to New York, and they were catching a gig or whatever. So I think the acumen of the average Lancastrian when it comes to music is pretty high. People have seen all different varieties of music come through here. And really, I've thought not much of it except to say, oh, hell yeah, I'm going to that. I think people kept going out to the shows because they didn't want to lose like the convenience and the real kind of uniqueness of these bands coming through this area. So the Chameleon Club was here. It started when I was a kid. My first show was there at their original location and on this back alley. Still very friendly with that original owner today. So you could try new things here, but you could also see like really big acts come through town. And therefore, I think we all grew up kind of realizing only when we left town just how freaking lucky we were. It's just a really vibrant music community. In the last 10, 15 years, the arts have gone crazy in general. We have dozens and dozens and dozens of privately owned art galleries. We have half a dozen privately owned coffee shops and breweries and distilleries and beautiful widened brick patios for walking. It's like a mini Austin, So a few years back, 10, 12 years ago, having been to South by in its earlier years as a tour manager for a really long time, I was like, man, this place would be great for a music conference. South by is a wonderful, amazing event, but it was getting superhumanly big, as wonderful, amazing things tend to. When they're great, people love them. But, by no fault of their own, it's a phenomenal institution now. It was getting less intimate. And I think most people who have gone before and after would agree with that. Perhaps maybe even the purveyors of the conference themselves would. And therefore, I just felt like there might be a compelling case for another South by style conference. And it just so happens I lived in a city that really reminded me of the location of South by. So that's Lancaster.
So do you think South by, because I've heard a lot of people say similar things to what you have, it's almost as if it's turned more into a music festival than a music conference. Would you agree with that?
I think it's even more than that. I think it is a television station and a worldwide event, and just it is the size of the Grammys, if you ask me. And I'm not being hyperbolic. It is a magnificent thing that just got really big, and I think if you're an unknown artist, for example, you'll see a bunch of stages where maybe the mainstream music listener doesn't know a lot of the groups, but those of us who are paying attention to new music as it's coming up, we can kind of say, well, yeah, but these groups are stamped as the next thing. So if you see the Struts playing South by, 2 years ago, and they haven't yet had a song on the radio, you're not like as blown away as maybe someone who had no idea who they were. I thought they were brilliant, and it made sense to me. But if you're a group, who's done a couple of national tours through small clubs and played to, 60 or 30 people, you're probably not getting that game change shot at South by. And that's just the way it is. It's a phenomenal event, but it's just not, it doesn't really cater to the journeyman who no one's heard of, but they're brilliant. And that is no fault of theirs. I can't stress that enough,
Yeah, definitely. So where did launch come into play? Talk about that. Where did that idea come from? What made you want to kind of create your own thing?
Well, that's kind of what I was saying. I thought that there was demand. There was a place for something where it was like really really focused on the unknown but deserving quantity in music, now that institutions like South by have gotten so successful and so popular that quote unquote small bands again were like bands that people really saw coming, and that were more intimately paying attention to the music trends. So I think that's really what compelled me, that and the evolution of my city into like not just an amazing, surprising destination for music, but really for art in general. I just knew it was the right place,
Yeah. And what was the process of creating a music conference? Like what, because you can't just wake up and make it happens, so what, talk about the good, the bad, the ugly.
Funny you should say that. So, okay, by way of like some professional credibility, yes, I had been a tour manager at that point for better part of 15 years. So I'd been to CMJ and I'd been to South by and I'd been to HMAC and a couple other things. But what I didn't take into account was that, no, I'd never done a music conference. I had a partner at the time. We talked about it a lot. And we both, between the two of us at the time, 10, 12 years ago, we had a combined 40 years putting on events, concerts. So we thought, how hard can it be? And that's that. It's kind of good that we started, at the beginning with the kind of DIY stuff that really was just necessity is the mother of invention. I mean, we weren't courageous people. We were doing what needed to be done. The labels were not fawning all over, punk bands and stuff. So we'd started our own things. So I think that spirit came through again. We're like, well, of course we can do this. There's a need for it. We're just going to do it and figure it out. So we sat down one day and we said, logical advice, unique career help, necessary career help. Logical advice and unique necessary career help launch. Very few people know that's an acronym, but that's where it kind of came from. We had a bunch of years where we'd known a lot of people managing bands, putting on concerts, releasing records. The two of us, separate labels and separate entities, but we joined forces, and myself and Rick Gadd, and we thought, hey, we know some people, and we were very fortunate. The first year, a lot of great panelists came. It was a great event. We didn't have to put a ton of money into it to make it go. And we had a few thousand people and we were thrilled. The challenge is to keep getting bigger without getting too big, to keep getting bigger while fiercely protecting intimacy for as long as we can. So that's what, he left 2013 quite amicably. And, I had a couple of people involved since, from Warped Tour and Kevin Lyman and the Entertainment Institute and in Jen but I'm going it alone again, and I'm super thrilled to do so. I've done it alone more than a few years, and we just keep trying to tweak it. We take really good notes on what people liked and what they didn't like, what worked and didn't work, and we remove and add as necessary. So it is kind of a fluid event, but the basic structure is important to us. You submit to perform, and you are automatically given an attendance badge. This is through tremendous support from brand partners. This is through a lot of sweat to make sure that we can eliminate expenses, doing as much as humanly possible with our own hands to make sure that it doesn't get too costly. We're fully committed to it. We know it costs a lot to travel here. We know it to travel anywhere. We know it costs a lot for lodging anywhere. So we at least protect that through the February deadline. Artists who submit are granted free entry, everyone in their group. And we're trying to stick to that for as long as humanly possible. We will have made it 11 years, and I see no reason to cease in offering that to artists.
What is a typical launch conference like for somebody that's never been to launch? What goes on there? What is launch all about?
Well, first, the word I always go to first is results. I've been to many conferences. I've participated in them as panelist and whatever. And I can tell you that while I thoroughly enjoy, as a music nerd, people sitting down and generously recounting and sharing their experiences with success, we are fiercely committed to those who are still doing it now at a reasonable level. It doesn't matter I'm not talking about, getting paid or whatever. I'm just talking about you've tried something and your body of work reflects an idea you had that worked. That's one of the main criteria. People who come here to donate very generously their time and expertise are not here to tell old man stories about 1994. They're here to talk about now. Another set is that they are folks that, we know pretty well. And if we don't, we vet them very carefully to make sure that they know launch is a competition for your attention. Now, I don't mean people have to come here and butt kiss and all that stuff, but, I don't want somebody who wants to say my panel's at 2, it ends at 3, I'll see you at 1:45 and I'm out of here at 3:15. We want people that have an open ear to something they've never heard before. At least an openness to sharing some of their methods and wisdom with those folks. If not, also being open to the fact that they may have their mind blown, that they hadn't heard everything in the whole world that was good yet just because they were succeeding. And I think that's what leads to the results, the vetting process. Cool people who don't, presume that they're never going to work with another band again. And we've seen quite a few, dozens and dozens of great relationships, whether they're show trades between artists, people who picked up new management clients and are still working together today, new signings to labels. I've signed a half a dozen bands at launch to CI Records. On and on and on to where people showing up at festivals that we had talent buyers for those festivals at launch. Bands got Warped Tour from launch. These are things that make me extremely happy. This is what I look for. This is what I expect every year. Now, everyone is not meant to get an opportunity. Everyone is not meant to be a star. But what I won't tolerate is people coming here who think they are basically, the guest of honor instead of here on a mission to listen to people and to consider working with them. So I think that's what makes it really unique. The bands, we try to explain to them, you're here, bring your A game. It is fully expected that you're going to be handing out demos, that you're going to be chatting people up, that you're going to be stopping them when they're on their way here or there and taking your shot. And that's something that I think people have really grasped. It took a few years for them to realize launch is not a gig. While there is an opportunity to be considered for performance consideration, it is way more than performing. So if you're not performing, it is really of value, in my opinion, to be here. Because how could you score a meeting with 40, 50, 60 people that you need a meeting with in one place in one weekend without an event such as this? That's my take on it.
Wow. So what did you study in college? What's your education background?
Well, that kind of goes back to my punk rock roots again. I mean, I went to school for business for 3 years. I was doing quite well. And then I just decided that I had a real problem with Pennsylvania had issues at shows and stuff with like Nazi skinheads, right, who have recently been in the news again. And I knew how I felt, and I was very involved in anti-racist action and stuff, but I really didn't think I knew why. Like, I didn't know how to articulate. I knew why in my heart, but I didn't really know how to. I was finding out that these folks were fairly organized and that they knew what they were talking about. So I thought, you know what, I'm going to counter them with my own I don't know, university sanctioned kind of wisdom here. So I went into the Black Studies program and I graduated in '93 as a Black Studies major with credits for a second major towards world cultures. It's funny when people say, "I don't use your degree." I dispute that. I was going to did a little bit of writing and stuff, nothing major, but what I really learned was, I'm from Lancaster, Pennsylvania, man. And I found myself traveling, 4 continents and 50 states, and I wasn't freaked. I know that you don't get a cookie if you're from California for saying something like that, but rural Pennsylvania, I was ready. I was hungry. I wanted to meet and see everything in action. I understood other cultures, and I really think I really did use my degree. And I also got to shut the Nazis down in their rhetoric, so felt good about that. Fuck them.
I have an appreciation for everything that you just said. Wow.
Cool.
Amazing.
It was interesting to be the first Caucasian in that program, in 35 years. So it was something that I really kind of, I don't want to sound patronistic or, like the typical, self-congratulatory liberal. So I'm going to be real careful here, but I will say, it's a unique experience to throw yourself into that. I mean, our Black population in Lancaster is under 8%. So you didn't have a lot of proximity. You didn't find yourself in a room with 45 people and you were the only one that looked like you. I think that was a very valuable experience for me as well.
As somebody that comes out of high school, how did you even decide to go to that school?
Well, I went to Pitt and I learned about, I was always one of my idols was, Martin Luther King, in my opinion, as well as should he. And, I was a big fan of like a lot of the 60s civil rights stuff. I had been reading a lot of literature privately. But I really found out that, a lot of the instructors there had worked with King and Malcolm X, and that they were deeply involved in civil, uh, forms of protest and peaceable, but civil on it, kind of, what I'm trying to say, civil disobedience. And I was fascinated. So I actually, at 18 years old, 19 years old, went and talked to some of the professors and just started taking classes cursorily in conjunction with my business degree. And then I just decided, you know what, this is me. I've been doing business since I'm, 13 years old. I've been dubbing cassettes and selling them at break, and running a mail order out of my parents' house, and running classifieds and Maximum Rock and Roll and all these other little indie magazines. And I don't think a sine cosine curve is going to really be necessary in my calculation of like how many 7-inch records do I have to sell to break even. So I just kind of decided, I'd gone through this business track all through high school, calculus and trig and all this crazy math. And I was just like, you know what, this is what I'm really curious about, and I really think I can put it to use. And I feel like I did. I feel like I continue to, honestly. I'm very proud of that degree. Learned a hell of a lot.
Yeah, I can imagine. For the record label, did you do any interning? Were you ever an intern? How did you grow that business from the ground up?
Oh, knowing not a damn thing, like nothing, I called the Discord House. This is an old, famous, in my view, performer, Ian Mackay. He founded his own record label. He was in an old punk band called Minor Threat, and caught a phone number from somebody and asked them for advice, like, where do you press your records and how much do they cost? They were exceedingly nice to me. I was a dumb kid, and they were super cool, gave me a lot of information. People would share a lot. This was not a parody of the mainstream. Like labels, and I'm not condemning today at all. Like I've evolved with it. I wouldn't call it evolving, but I've adapted, to the way things are now, and I'm not condemning it at all. But it was, you have to understand, nobody wanted to do this. Like only the artists themselves wanted to advance their music, make it possible for purchase. There wasn't like a model or a business, proposal of how many units and this and that. You just put out a record. This guy was putting out Henry Rollins' earliest releases, and he was putting out his own bands. And I just, he and, the example in like Jello Biafra from the Dead Kennedys had been doing a record label. Kevin Seconds from his old band, 7 Seconds, had been doing a record label. So I just did what they were doing. I think the thing is, I kind of kept adapting to what was expected, where my older friends were like condemning anything after 1993. I was like fascinated, and continue to be, by new bands. And if things have changed and there's more expectations of advertising and budgets and this and that, I'm not offended by it. I learned a long time ago what I'm willing to do, the degree to which I'm willing to suffer for my own art. It's not reasonable to expect that from everyone else. So, but I do still maintain, that the fundamental lesson in all of that to me was, remember you love this. And I say it all the time at launch when someone just looks so desperate and so, please give me the keys to the kingdom. I need to quit everything and buy a house and be famous. No, you don't. The aforementioned Ian Mackay said something at a spoken word, and I've quoted him a million times, and I hope he doesn't mind a million and one. The success is creating the record the way you want it to be, and I'm paraphrasing, creating it the way you wanted it to sound, bringing it to market the way you wanted it to look, and you've done it. You've succeeded. The rest of it is just extra. Now I understand, and I differ from him a little bit in that I understand there are just greater ambitions today. It's just the way it is. People do quantify the value of their music to a certain degree based on how many streams or sales they get. And I don't say, oh, you're so it's so gross that all you care about is that. But I don't think it should be all you care about. Just because I can tolerate some of that, I still remind them, like, you love this. People like skiing. They never expect to get paid to do it. There are a bunch of tens of thousands of hacks out there swinging golf clubs that cost them $1,000, and they'll never make the PGA. I think people need to approach this with much more levity, the way we actually had to, or just expected nothing more when we were kids, and there were no modalities or methods available to become famous. I think it would be useful.
And for launch, or for the record label, either mentorships. Have you done any mentoring? Have you, like, yourself?
Yes, I mentor. Well, you had asked me about, because internships. There were no internships for me. There was nothing really. There's no organized effort. But yes, I've had at least 100 plus interns, and have been a proctor to over 100 students. Some of them will reveal that they're not even in school, that they just wanted to intern, and we're cool with all of that. With the schools, we're accredited with 4 different schools, and they can actually earn collegiate credit and stuff. And I teach at a variety of the local schools. I guest teach a few times a year at each. I really enjoy that aspect a ton. I've always been deeply interested in generations, and typically that's younger folks. I mean, I'm not trying to go to the diner with them or hang out with them inappropriately, but I've really cherished one of the greatest gifts of being involved in music to me is staying up on things. I just really like that. I really love hearing the new what's next. I'm not so much interested in some of the pop culture things, like, the Keeping with the Kardashians or The Bachelor stuff. I'm talking mostly about music, but I've really enjoyed that proximity to what's happening in the new generation. I think that's awesome. So mentoring has also given back a lot to me. I've really enjoyed it.
What do you have planned for this year?
Oh, it's all secrets and gossip and innuendo at this point, Kay. There's a fairly large announcement about a new kind of partner venture that I think people can expect by the new year with an artist that's taken a really, really strong interest in this, a very successful artist. So we expect that to be kind of cool news. We're still kind of nailing down launches. Launch is a confusing thing to a lot of agents and managers, because music festival usually means huge budget, and big offers and stuff. And we're just not built like that. Our priority is the unknown artists. So when we try to seed the lineup with larger or better known acts, it's not a blank check. So establishing these marquee showcases, we don't even call them headliners. We still keep them in the verbiage of a conference. Can prove a little difficult, because you really don't know who you're going to get, because they kind of have to buy into the entire value and concept of the event itself. But in the end, that's cool, because the groups that play it are there with a greater understanding than this is just a gig. So listen to that. Even the marquee bands that are getting paid pretty big bucks are there because they buy into the whole thing, and that's why I constantly remind artists, playing or not, you should be there to take advantage of this entire offering. It's crazy cool.
And what do you hope for the future of Launch?
Steady growth is something any, business-minded person would be a fool not to welcome, but not at any cost. And that's what I keep kind of driving home, all the time. So if it grows, terrific, makes things easier. Maybe we can provide even bigger and better services and cooler experiences and more fun. But really just to maintain that intimacy and remain totally devoted to, the idea that submitted artists get complimentary badges. And finally, to make sure that we're constantly focused on the right people and results. That's just really important to me. There are fantasy camps in baseball where you can go and hit really slow pitch baseballs off of famous ex pitchers from your favorite team and stuff. And I find a lot of these events, honestly, run by great people and really well meaning, but it becomes a fantasy camp. And I really think, Launch is straight talk. It's people who will tell you the truth about where you're succeeding and where, in their estimation, there's room for improvement. What's more, they'll tell you how. This is not a place where people just say, work your social media, develop an image. This is more. This is deeper, and that's what I really like. So I need Launch to stay really focused on education, really focused on stewarding to the unknown artist, and to maintain its intimacy and provide real chances for results.
And what is something you know now that you wish you knew when you started?
Everything. No, well, everything changed, I think we kind of did well to explain that a little bit. There wasn't any of this, Kevin Lyman would tell you the same thing. It's just, we were all just kind of lucky that, to some extent, that some of this stuff just got popular, and that the artists that were enjoying this success wanted their old homies involved. So, that's my tour manager, that's my merch guy, that's my booking agent. All of us old heads just kind of went along for the ride, but we knew how to handle that artist, that style of music, that fan base. So even as, major dollars started being thrown behind it, they still needed the people who knew how to connect to that fan base that led the labels to put major dollars behind it. And that's where we came in. We were just right place, right time, So, I think now it's been a slow kind of adaptation for me. It hasn't been that shocking. Yes, if I do a comparison contrast 2018 to, or 2019 to, 1989, it's going to be completely dissimilar. But I haven't really noticed. I've been involved so deeply, and it's just kind of gone in this direction, and I've adapted just fine.
So if a band wants to submit to Play Launch, or if people want to check out more about it, where can they go, and how should bands submit to you?
Yeah, launchmusicconference.com. There's a video recap shot by one Kay Inaglio, I believe. Okay. Did I say it right?
You were close. Inagonio.
Anagonio, I'm gonna get it. Yes, it was shot. There is a recap video. It's about 8 minutes, and it's shot by Kay Anagonio. Did I do it right there? How was that one? Was that good?
Yeah.
All right.
I'll give it to you.
Anyway, it's shot by Kay. And,
there it is. That's why we go
by
Kay.
Edited by one of the guys in the office as well, and I think it kind of gives you a pretty good, nice, easy way to understand the event. It's some visuals. And then you just click, submit to perform. Now, performance submissions do close end of first week of February, so people do need to be aware of that. After that, we take a month and we review about 1,000 submissions, which does mean thousands and thousands of extensions of complimentary badges. So but that's another story. But we board of 8 review every single submission, try to place them where we can. We place usually around 160 acts. Sometimes we'll have added venues, and we'll stage upwards of 200. And then we'll notify them, and we'll start to build out the schedule and press towards the announce. So you go in there, you submit to perform, or you can just register to attend. Launches for aspiring musicians or for people who want to become involved in music business and make connections and learn some things in that right. So people can register to attend as well. And, like most things, you get a discount if you do it early, and you get screwed if you do it late. So it's better to act earlier rather than later. But yeah, you just go to the website, check out the video, and submit to perform or register to attend, and you're in. Kate, you've been there, so it's also not nearly as boring as maybe I may have made it sound. I'm a total freaking learning nerd. I love it. But it's a pretty big fucking party too. It's a good time.
Just go watch the recap video, guys. Just go watch it. It's fine. You'll get it. And if people want to reach out to you directly to pick your brain a little bit more, is there a place they could go to do that?
Yeah, I mean, everybody's busy. I don't care if you got 4 letters to take to the post office and that's your whole day. Some people consider that really busy. And then, I have a lot of things that I do, but I really try to answer emails as best I possibly can. I would encourage people, if I haven't gotten back to them, just bump it, so I can throw it to the top of the stack again. But Jeremy, Jeremy, at launchmusicconference.com. We do a lot of other things. We released a film called Barn Burner that I was a producer of, and I arranged all of the locations and all of the subject matter for that. And I've released, over 120 records, and I put on over, 1,700 shows. So I have a good time. I do a lot of different things. Yeah, you were talking about entrepreneurship. I don't think I found anything ever that was loosely related to music that I didn't want to hustle for. So it's fun.
Yeah. And any final advice for anyone out there that's either trying to get into the music industry or maybe they want to start their own music conference?
Oh, I think that you need to, first of all, go for it. Jeez, man. Like, what the hell? I mean, one thing is, it's great to have a plan B, but if you think you can constantly have subsequent parallel lives where you can have this day gig and then you try to fun at this thing at night, your odds are very greatly diminished. I mean, for most of us, we operate best when our back's up against the wall, right? So if you don't go for it and try to think about it in terms of, if I don't do this well, I don't eat, I don't have a roof over my head, that's something that I chose to do. I chose to just quit everything and go for it. Now, I don't want everybody to lose everything they got, but I'm just saying, to me, go for it, especially if you're in your low 20s. What the hell, man? You know how many friends I have looking back over their lives saying, I really wish I'd have gone for it. I mean, it's so generic, but it's so true. So what the hell do you have to lose? You're probably smart enough. I mean, I'm no rocket scientist. If your hustle is strong and you got a couple of gifts and you know it, freaking go for it. Stop being such a wuss.
That was the most punk rock ending ever. Perfect. The Jeremy Weiss way.
Oh, I forgot to say fuck the president. Okay, now it's punk rock.
Yeah.
But, all right. So,
all right, bud.
I love you.
Talk to you soon. Love you too, man.
Man.
All right. That was Jeremy Weiss, the creator, the founder of Launch Music Conference. If you guys want to check it out, go to launchmusicconference.com. Get some tickets. Sign yourself up to play. You might get in. You might get free tickets. And you might get to play. And you might get to meet the label heads at Fearless Records and amongst many, many, many other absolutely incredible people. You guys, it's crazy. I think my band might submit to play. I don't know. Jeremy, can we play? This is my submission to you. Okay, just kidding. I'll do it formally. I'll be a professional about this. Be a professional. Go to Launch Music Conference. Get your questions answered. I went as a videographer last year, and I wish I could have sat in on every single panel that I filmed because I don't even know what happened half the time because I was so focused on filming it. But I'm gonna be there again next year. I can't wait. I love going to Lancaster. It's one of my favorite cities in the entire country. It's so unique. It's this mix of Amish culture and hipster modern. It's super cool. Check it out. Thank you, Jeremy, for being on this podcast. If you guys are into film and photography, there are some links down below for you. If you need discounts on things such as editing softwares, Lightroom, Photoshop, Premiere, After Effects, things like that. And if you are looking for some discounts on your things, on your online purchases, check out Honey. Join Honey. Links are all down below. Thank you guys. I'll talk to you next week on Project Freelance.